Hamas will hand over 6 more hostages, including Arbel Yehud, paving the way for displaced Palestinians to return to northern Gaza from Monday. President Trump and his Colombian counterpart trade threats of tariffs after Colombia turned back 2 migrant deportation flights. And we report from Belarus as the authoritarian leader Alexander Lukashenko looks to have overwhelmingly won the presidential election, which the EU has called a sham. The election in Belarus, which is widely accepted to have been rigged, has allowed the man often described as Europe's last dictator to continue his 30-year rule there. An exit poll claims to show Alexander Lukashenko winning about 90% of the vote. While Belarusians were casting their ballots, he actually held a 4-hour news conference where he said he had no regrets about helping Russia to invade Ukraine, claimed that some of the political opponents that he jailed had chosen to be in prison, and announced that any successor of his should be a man, as in his words, a woman could not be a dictator. The Trump administration says it issued the change in refugee policy due to the entry of additional refugees. It would be, quote, detrimental to the interests of the United States. It did say it may jointly make exceptions and admit refugees on a case-by-case basis when in the national interest and there is no threat to America's security or welfare. All right, let's take a look now at some other stories making headlines at this hour. The UN head, Antonio Guterres, has called on Rwanda to withdraw its forces from eastern Congo and halt its support for M23 fighters advancing on the key city of Goma. The UN Security Council has been meeting to discuss the escalation in fighting, which has seen some 400,000 people displaced in less than a month. 13 foreign peacekeepers are among hundreds of people killed in recent days. Speaking at the UN session, the country's foreign minister said that Rwanda's forces had crossed into Congolese territory in what amounted to a, quote, declaration of war. Sudan's army chief and de facto president Abdel Fattah al-Burhan had praised what he described as the resilience and sacrifice of soldiers who defended the military headquarters in Khartoum. He was visiting the site 2 days after his forces broke through to the complex, which was surrounded by the paramilitary rapid support forces for nearly 2 years. Its recapture comes after other recent gains for the Sudanese army. And President Trump issued an executive order directing the federal government to take control of managing California's water resources if deemed ineffective. Trump has been critical of the state's response to recent devastating wildfires. He also ordered the creation of a review board for the Federal Emergency Management Agency just days after he threatened to close it down. This all comes as California sees its first significant rainfall in months, bringing some relief, but also bringing the risk of mudslides.
A report on the South Korean plane crash details how the pilots spotted a flock of birds a second before they declared an emergency. And celebrations and protests. Some call it Australia Day, others Invasion Day. Now, survivors of the Holocaust will gather today, along with heads of state and royalty, at the site of the Nazi concentration camp Auschwitz in southern Poland to mark the 80th anniversary of its liberation. The event will commemorate the 6 million Jews, Roma, gay and disabled people murdered in the Holocaust. It will be a day to remember those who perished and to remind us all that such horror should never be allowed to happen again.
They came from all over Nazi-occupied Europe. Train upon trainload of deported Jews packed tightly in cattle trucks. Destination Auschwitz. Extermination by poison gas. 6 million Jews were murdered in total in Nazi camps, along with others labelled undesirable. The aim was wipe them out. Auschwitz camp was the most brutally efficient.
More than 1 million lost here the life.
Eva Umlauf was one of the few and youngest left alive in Auschwitz 80 years ago, liberated by Soviet soldiers. She's come back here in commemoration. Son Erich and granddaughter Nadia have joined her from the US.
It is a very emotional moment this day.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It just brings back the memories of everything that she went through.
Diese Enthumanisierung heißt, die haben den
The
Menschen
Nazis saw us Jews as subhumans, Eva told me, like rats,
die Menschen,
to be
die
poisoned.
Juden für Ratten gehalten.
What's sometimes hard to absorb all these years on from the Holocaust is the industrial scale at which the mass murder took place. It was a machine. It was meticulous and so cold-blooded. Not content with robbing victims of their lives, the Nazis also sought to profit from them.
In their slaughterhouse, the Nazi butchers wasted as little of the body as possible.
Gold teeth torn from the mouths of the murdered, the hair of women and girls shaved off and sold on. Mountains of shoes repurposed.
And trains full of the shoes were coming from Auschwitz to this place.
This, the site of another Nazi camp with leather factories.
And look at that. So, and these are children's shoes.
Oh, that's a
shoes.
child's shoe. You still find remains of the shoes on the forest floor today.
These shoes in the forest are, they are screaming, they are shouting in the way. It's like an anti-war message. It's like an anti-hatred message.
80 years on, wars rage, prejudice is palpable in politics and social media. Have the lessons of Auschwitz been forgotten?
I feel as a young person a heightened sense of othering, whether it's along the lines of race, religion. That's really what makes my grandmother's story particularly relevant.
Is this a warning for now?
It is warning for now because
because we live in dangerous times and we're afraid history can repeat itself.
Katja Adler, BBC News, Auschwitz.
And a reminder that Holocaust Memorial Day, Lucy Hawkins will be presenting from Auschwitz, where survivors and world leaders will come together for a day of commemorations.